The glowing book. Sunbeams, thick with drifting particles, lanced through the dusty stillness of the attic. Aisha choked back a cough, swatting the air. The room smelled of potpourri long past its prime, mingled with the mustiness of forgotten keepsakes, tattered needle points, dolls with cracked visages, and brittle stacks of newsprint bound with fraying string. It was Abuela's repository of bygone days, and Aisha, armed with a flashlight and an insatiable spirit, intended to explore every corner. At her heels, Comet, a wiry mutt, whimpered softly, his tail tucked. This chamber of shadows held no appeal for him. Squirrels in Abuela's blossoming garden were far more enticing than this labyrinth of draped furniture. "Easy, boy," Aisha soothed, ruffling his fur. "Just a quick look around. Maybe we'll unearth a relic of a chew toy." The promise of a forgotten treasure momentarily brightened Comet's demeanor. He investigated a dust-laden chest overflowing with aged lace before sneezing spectacularly. Giggling, Aisha ventured deeper. Her fingers trailed along the worn spine of a book bound in leather, its title obscured by accumulated grime. A puff of breath revealed the faint glimmer of gilt lettering. Recetas de l'Arbre. Probably just Grandma's old cookbook, she surmised, returning it to its place. She resumed her exploration, the beam of her flashlight slicing through the gloom. In the farthest reaches, nearly concealed beneath a heap of faded bedcovers, something caught her eye. It was a book unlike any she had encountered, not in size or shape, which were unremarkable, but because of the faint, unearthly luminescence it emitted. Aisha approached with caution, her pulse quickening. The air around the tome seemed to ripple, bending the shadows. The glow throbbed softly like a heartbeat. Comet emitted a low growl, his fur bristling along his spine. He pressed closer to Aisha, nudging her hand with his nose, a rare display of nervousness. Kneeling, Aisha carefully peeled back the quilts. The book was encased in dark leather, almost ebony in hue, polished smooth by time. Absent were elaborate patterns or adornments. Only a singular word was embossed on the cover, rendered in what appeared to be archaic Hebrew characters. Below, in a more familiar script, a single name, Ezekiel. Ezekiel, Aisha breathed, tracing the letters. The name was foreign to her. As she touched it, the light intensified, washing her hand in an otherworldly radiance. A palpable energy crackled in the air, raising goosebumps on her arms. Comet whined again, a deep, guttural sound, and pawed frantically at her, urging her away. "It's all right, Comet," Aisha reassured him, though uncertainty gnawed at her. Just a book, but it was more than that. It resonated with a strange power. Ignoring Comet's pleas, Aisha reached for it. Her fingertips brushed the spine, and the light flared with unexpected brilliance, momentarily blinding her. She recoiled, gasping, and shielded her eyes. Startled, Comet yelped and lunged forward, his small body colliding with the book. It tottered on the pile of quilts, then fell open with a quiet sigh. In an instant, the attic was awash in a near-blinding luminance. Light streamed from the open pages, banishing the shadows from every corner. Dust motes danced like miniature galaxies caught in the book's ethereal glow. Aisha watched, enthralled. The pages weren't filled with script, as she had anticipated, but with intricate diagrams and symbols, each radiating its own inner light. They seemed to writhe and shift before her eyes, morphing into patterns she couldn't decipher. Comet, momentarily dazed, shook his head and barked sharply at the book, as if to drive it away with sound. The barking appeared to have no effect, or perhaps it did. The symbols on the pages began to whirl faster, the light growing hotter, almost unbearable. Aisha felt a compelling pull, as if drawn by a magnetic force. She reached out, her hand trembling, irresistibly drawn to the radiant pages. The sharp scent of ozone permeated the air, mingling with the aged lavender and dust. Suddenly, a voice echoed her mind, distinct and strong, as though whispering directly into her consciousness. "Not yet," it intoned. "You're not ready." Aisha gasped, clutching her head in both hands. The voice vanished as quickly as it had materialized, leaving her disoriented and breathless. The book's luminosity lessened somewhat, though it still pulsed with a faint, unearthly glow. Sensing her distress, Comet licked her hand, whimpering softly. Aisha embraced him, burying her face in his soft fur. What had just happened? What was that voice? Her gaze returned to the book, lying open on the floor. The diagrams and symbols remained, faintly illuminated, but they no longer writhed. The intense energy had receded, leaving behind only a lingering sense of awe and foreboding. Aisha knew, with a profound certainty, that this was no mere forgotten volume. This was something exceptional, something potent, something that could alter her life. And she had a premonition that her summer respite at Abuela's was about to become immensely more complicated. With deliberate care, she closed the book. The radiant aura dissipated almost instantly, plunging the attic back into its familiar half-light. The lingering scent of ozone and the strange brew of wonder and trepidation in Aisha's heart were the only indicators of the recent events. She lifted the book, its leather cover cool against her skin. It felt heavy, imbued not just with physical weight, but with the burden of the unknown, the weight of ages. "We need to discover what this is, Comet," she murmured, her voice barely audible. And what that voice was. Comet barked once, a short, resolute sound of accord. He mirrored her sense of urgency, her determination to unravel the mystery of the luminous book of Ezekiel. Journey to the Cloud World. The Hebrew lettering on the cover of Ezekiel pulsed, casting an eerie green glow across the attic. Aisha, clutching the book, felt a dizzying pull, a sensation akin to falling upwards. Comet, perched on her shoulder, squawked in alarm, digging his tiny claws into her sweater. "Hold on tight, Comet," she yelled, though she wasn't sure if he understood. The attic dissolved. The musty smell of aged wood and forgotten treasures vanished, replaced by the scent of ozone and something akin to spun sugar. The hard floor beneath her feet disappeared, and a soft, yielding surface took its place. Aisha squeezed her eyes shut against the overwhelming sensation, but the pull intensified. It felt like being sucked through a kaleidoscope, colors and shapes swirling in a chaotic dance. When she dared to open her eyes again, the attic was gone. She stood, or rather, floated slightly on a surface of pure white cloud. Above, below, and all around stretched an endless expanse of swirling, shifting clouds, tinted with hues of lavender, rose, and gold. The air hummed with an otherworldly energy, a low thrum that vibrated in her very bones. Comet, still clinging to her shoulder, chirped nervously. Where are we?" she asked, her voice barely audible above the humming. I don't know," Aisha stammered, her eyes wide with wonder and a healthy dose of apprehension. "But I think we're inside the book." The clouds beneath her feet rippled, like a disturbed pool of water. Aisha gasped as a section of the cloud solidified, forming a precarious-looking pathway that stretched into the swirling mist. The pathway shimmered, its edges blurring in and out of existence. "This isn't exactly stable," Comet observed, his voice trembling. Aisha took a tentative step onto the cloud path. It felt surprisingly solid, yet with a disconcerting give, like walking on a giant marshmallow. Another step, and another. The path held, but the swirling clouds around her seemed to press in, whispering unintelligible secrets. Strange shapes began to form in the clouds, fleeting glimpses of impossible creatures, buildings that defied gravity, and landscapes that shifted and morphed before her eyes. One moment, she saw a towering city of crystal spires. The next, a vast desert stretching towards a crimson horizon. "What is this place?" Aisha whispered, her heart pounding. A low, mournful sound echoed through the cloudscape, like the cry of a whale carried on the wind. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. adding to the unsettling atmosphere. "Did you hear that?" Comet squeaked, burying his head in her hair. Aisha nodded, her senses on high alert. The beauty of the cloud world was undeniable, but it was also unsettling, dangerous. The constant shifting and the sense of unreality made it hard to get her bearings. She felt adrift, lost in a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. The cloud path ahead forked into two, each disappearing into the swirling mist. Aisha stopped, unsure which way to go. Both paths looked equally unstable, equally mysterious. "Which way, Aisha?" Comet asked, his voice barely a whisper. Aisha hesitated, scanning the swirling clouds for any sign, any clue. But there was nothing, only the endless expanse of shifting shapes and the mournful cry that echoed through the air. She closed her eyes, trying to focus, trying to sense which path felt right. A faint warmth emanated from the path on the left, a subtle energy that resonated with the book clutched in her hand. Aisha opened her eyes, a flicker of determination in her gaze. "Left," she said, stepping onto the left-hand path. As she walked, the clouds around her thickened, obscuring the path behind. The air grew colder, and the mournful cry intensified, closer now, more insistent. Aisha gripped the book tighter, her knuckles white. Whatever lay ahead, she knew it wouldn't be easy. The worried prophet. The swirling clouds parted, revealing a figure hunched beside a towering, obsidian lectern. He was cloaked in simple, earth-toned fabric, his face etched with worry lines deeper than any Aisha had ever seen. Wisps of white hair escaped from beneath a woven cap, framing eyes that seemed to hold the weight of 1,000 unspoken prophecies. Comet ruffled his feathers nervously, digging his talons a little deeper into Aisha's shoulder. She gently stroked his back, offering silent reassurance. "Hello," Aisha called out, her voice echoing slightly in the vast cloud-filled space. "Are you Ezekiel?" The figure startled, his head snapping up. He squinted at Aisha, his gaze unfocused for a moment before sharpening with recognition. "Aisha," he rasped, his voice thin and reedy, like dry leaves skittering across stone. "You came. Thank goodness." He rose slowly, leaning heavily on the lectern for support. He looked older than the ancient texts Aisha had seen him associated with. "We followed the warmth," Aisha said, gesturing to the faint, golden glow emanating from the direction she'd come. "But what is this place? And what's wrong?" Ezekiel sighed, a sound like air escaping a punctured bellows. "This is, or rather, was the wellspring of visions, the place where I receive the words of the divine." He swept a hand, encompassing the swirling clouds, the precarious pathways, and the unsettling sense of instability that permeated the air. "Now it is fractured." "Fractured? How?" Aisha asked, stepping closer, Comet still clinging tightly to her. "A shadow," Ezekiel said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "A creature born of doubt and despair. It feeds on the visions, stealing them away, leaving only emptiness." He gestured to a section of the clouds that seemed to be dissolving, fading into nothingness. "The visions are not merely images," he explained. "They are the foundation upon which this world, and in a way, your world, is built. As they disappear, reality itself begins to unravel." Aisha frowned. "But what kind of visions? What do they do?" Ezekiel's gaze turned inward, as if he were trying to recall something that was slipping away. "They are warnings, guidance, glimpses of what could be. They show the path to righteousness, the consequences of sin. They inspire hope, and they offer solace in times of darkness." He paused, struggling to articulate his thoughts. "They are the lifeblood of faith." He walked towards the dissolving clouds, his hand outstretched as if trying to grasp something intangible. But now they are fading. The shadow, it is relentless. Comet chirped nervously, nipping gently at Aisha's ear. She understood his anxiety. The idea of a creature stealing away hope and faith was deeply unsettling. "Can't you stop it?" Aisha asked, her brow furrowed in concentration. If you're the prophet, can't you use your powers to fight it? Ezekiel shook his head, his expression filled with despair. I have tried, child. I have prayed. I have fasted. I have meditated. But the shadow is too strong. It is fueled by the very doubt it creates. With each vision it steals, it grows more powerful, and my own strength diminishes. He turned back to Aisha, his eyes pleading. That is why you are here. The book, it sensed the danger, the imbalance. It called for someone with a pure heart, someone who still believes in the power of hope. Aisha felt a surge of responsibility, a weight settling upon her shoulders. Me? But I'm just me. You are more than you know, Aisha, Ezekiel said, a faint glimmer of hope flickering in his eyes. You carry within you a spark of the divine. You have the courage to face the unknown, the compassion to help those in need, and the faith to believe in what is right. He reached out and gently touched her hand. You must find a shadow, Aisha. You must retrieve the stolen visions before it is too late. A sudden, mournful cry echoed through the cloudscape. Closer this time, more desperate. Ezekiel flinched. It is near, he whispered, his voice trembling. Be careful, Aisha, the shadow. It will try to corrupt you, to fill you with doubt and despair. Do not listen to its lies. Hold fast to your faith and remember the power of hope. The shadow of gloom. The visions, Ezekiel croaked, his voice a fragile thread against the wellspring's echoing dampness. They were cradled in spheres, luminous globes of raw light and pigment, each encompassing a sliver of reality, past, present, and potential. Aisha knit her brow, struggling with the concept. Globes? Like fragile baubles. More resilient than that. Ezekiel countered, a spark of his former vibrancy returning as he elaborated. Picture a rainbow made solid, bearing the gravity of 1,000 dawns. Each resonates with a distinct cadence, a symphony composing the weave of existence itself. Comet huddled beside Aisha, his whiskers anxiously piped up with a nervous squeak. And this, gloom, he's pilfering them. Ezekiel's nod was heavy, a pulse settling over his features. He consumes luminescence, leaving only desolation in his wake. These are not mere objects. They're the cornerstones of belief, the wellspring of optimism. Their absence will drown us in despair. He gestured weakly at the shattered remains of the wellspring, its once vibrant waters now stagnant and gray. He's claimed too many already. The very air is thick with doubt. Even the stars seem to have lost their luster. Aisha advanced, her gaze resolute. We have to stop him. My strength is failing, Ezekiel confessed, his voice laced with anguish. My connection to the divine, it's unraveling. I can barely perceive the remaining spheres. But I detect something within you, Aisha, a nascent flame, a resonance with the divine unlike any I've sensed in centuries. And you, Comet, your unwavering loyalty and sharp wit will be invaluable assets. He fixed them with a desperate stare, pleading silently. You must reclaim the stolen visions. You must rekindle the light. Comet trembled, his fur prickling. Me? Imnoaru. I'm just Comet. Aisha placed a reassuring hand on his back. We'll face this together, Comet. We can prevail. She refocused on Ezekiel. Tell us where to begin. Ezekiel closed his eyes, summoning the last dregs of his power. I sensed a disturbance near the Whispering Woods, a locus where the trees themselves murmur secrets to the breeze. He has drawn several orbs there, I suspect, attracted to the inherent magic of that place. The gloom is drawn to power, to locations where the boundary between worlds is permeable. As he spoke, an icy gust swept through the wellspring, snuffing out the few remaining candles. The atmosphere grew oppressive, suffocating. Aisha shuddered, despite the day's residual warmth. Be warned, Ezekiel strained, his voice cracking. The gloom is more than a mere thief. He is a creature of insidiousness, born of mortal anxieties and terrors. He thrives on hopelessness, growing stronger with each vision he devours. He will seek to break your resolve, to infect you with the same hollowness that defines him. From the inkiest depths of the wellspring, a pair of crimson eyes snapped open. They were devoid of warmth, radiating only a chilling, predatory hunger. A tendril of darkness peeled away from the shadows, solidifying into a vaguely humanoid form. It stood tall and emaciated, its limbs grotesquely elongated, like the skeletal branches of a blighted tree. It wore the decaying remnants of what might once have been opulent robes, now defiled and rotting. This was Gloom. He remained cloaked in darkness, a silent observer, eavesdropping on their scheme. A cruel smile twisted his lips, revealing rows of razor-edged teeth. He relished the aroma of their hope, knowing just how easily it could be tainted. The spark within Aisha captivated him. It was a brilliant beacon, a delectable contrast to his own inner darkness. He craved to extinguish it, to witness her light dissolve into oblivion. He extended a skeletal hand, his fingers grazing the crumbling stone of the wellspring. A wave of despair crashed over Aisha, a sudden, overwhelming sense of futility. She staggered backward, gasping for air, her heart hammering in her chest. "What was that?" Comet cried, burying his face against Aisha's side. Aisha shook her head, struggling to regain her composure. I don't know. It felt like all hope was just sucked out of me." Ezekiel's eyes flew open, his gaze snapping towards the shadows. "He's here. He's watching. You must flee now, before he can corrupt you." Aisha drew her sword, its polished surface reflecting the wellspring's meager light. Her hand trembled almost imperceptibly, but her voice held firm. "We won't allow him to prevail. We will retrieve those orbs and restore the light." She seized Comet's hand, pulling him towards the wellspring's entrance. Comet, let us find the Whispering Woods." As they turned to depart, Aisha risked one final glance back at the shadows. The crimson eyes remained, burning with a malevolent light. Gloom remained hidden, patient, knowing that their journey had just begun. He would be lying in wait for them, lurking in the shadows, prepared to snuff out their hope and seize their visions for himself. The hunt was on, and he intended to savor every agonizing moment. The spinning wheels. The air shimmered, the scent of ozone sharp in Aisha's nostrils, and then the forest floor vanished. She gasped, grabbing for Comet, who squawked in alarm as they plunged into a kaleidoscope of motion. Towering above them, around them, beneath them were wheels. Giant, intricate wheels of brass and bone, wood and woven moonlight, all spinning with dizzying speed. Some were small as dinner plates, others vast as cathedrals, each etched with symbols that seemed to shift and writhe before her eyes. "Where are we?" Aisha shouted over the grinding, whirring cacophony. Comet, clinging to her shoulder, chirped frantically, "I think it's Ezekiel's vision, the one he told us about. The wheels within wheels." He was right. Aisha remembered Ezekiel's description, the awe in his voice as he recounted the impossible geometry, the divine machinery that underpinned reality. But this was terrifying. The air thrummed with a chaotic energy, and the spinning wheels seemed to pulse with a malevolent life of their own. Suddenly, a section of the floor beneath them buckled. Aisha yelped, leaping back just as a cluster of smaller, razor-edged wheels erupted from the ground, spinning like whirling dervishes. "Gloom!" she yelled, recognizing the signature of the creature's dark influence. "He's trying to stop us." "Well, he's doing a pretty good job." Comet chirped, his voice laced with panic. Aisha scanned their surroundings, trying to find a path, a way through the relentless onslaught of spinning metal and bone. The wheels moved in seemingly random patterns, creating a disorienting maze. She noticed that some of the larger wheels seemed to have gaps in their spokes, moments of stillness amidst the chaos. "Comet, can you see any patterns? Anything that might help us navigate this?" The little bird puffed up his chest, trying to appear braver than he felt. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them wide. "There, The wheels with the spiral symbols. They seem to be connected like a chain. If we can follow them. Taking a deep breath, Aisha started moving, carefully stepping between the whirling blades and dodging the erratic movements of the smaller wheels. Comet, perched on her shoulder, guided her, his anxious chirps becoming increasingly confident as they progressed. Left, now right. Careful, Aisha. That one's spinning faster. The heat from the friction of the wheels was intense, the air thick with the metallic tang of ozone and the earthy scent of pulverized wood. Aisha felt her muscles burning, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Gloom was making this as difficult as possible. As they moved deeper into the maze, the wheels began to change. Some are now coated in thick, cloying webs that slowed their movements, but also threatened to ensnare Aisha. Others emitted bursts of icy wind that numbed her skin. The environment itself seemed to be fighting against them, fueled by Gloom's power. "He's trying to wear us down," Aisha said, gritting her teeth. "He wants us to give up." A wave of despair washed over her, a familiar darkness whispering insidious doubts. "You can't do this, Aisha. It's too dangerous. You're not strong enough." She shook her head, pushing the voice away. She wouldn't let Gloom win. Suddenly, a massive wheel, easily the size of a house, loomed before them. It was crafted from polished obsidian, its surface reflecting their distorted images back at them. As it spun, it emitted a low, resonant hum that vibrated through Aisha's bones, amplifying her fears and anxieties. That's one of his traps," Comet stammered, his feathers ruffled. "It feeds on negative emotions. We have to get past it, but how?" Aisha stared at the spinning obsidian, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that if she lingered too long, she would be consumed by despair. But she also knew that she couldn't simply turn back. She closed her eyes, focusing on the memory of Ezekiel's words, his unwavering faith in the divine. She thought of the hope that she carried within her, the spark of light that Gloom was trying to extinguish. Taking a deep breath, Aisha opened her eyes and stepped forward. As she approached the obsidian wheel, she began to sing. It wasn't a polished melody, but a simple, heartfelt tune filled with courage and determination. "Though darkness surrounds me, I will not fear," she sang, her voice trembling at first, but growing stronger with each word. "For hope is within me, and light is always near." As she sang, the obsidian wheel slowed, its humming fading into a gentle whisper. The distorted reflections on its surface began to clear, revealing a glimpse of the path ahead. Comet chirped in amazement. "It's working, Aisha. Keep singing." Aisha continued to sing, her voice echoing through the maze of spinning wheels. The song was a shield, a beacon, a testament to the power of hope in the face of despair. And as she sang, she knew that she and Comet, together, could face whatever gloom threw their way. The four living creatures. The obsidian wheel shattered, its fragments dissolving in a shimmering dust that swirled around Aisha and Comet before vanishing completely. A wave of warmth washed over her, replacing the chilling despair that had clung to her like a shroud. She stumbled, catching herself on a nearby cog, its teeth thankfully still. We did it, Comet." Aisha gasped, her chest heaving. Comet, perched on her shoulder, chirped weakly, his feathers ruffled. "Barely. That was unpleasant, even for me." He preened a little, smoothing down his plumage. "But onward, I sensed something different just beyond." Aisha nodded, drawing a deep breath. Ezekiel's voice, though still faint, echoed in her mind. Underscore the first guardian, the essence of creation. Underscore she pushed forward, the grinding gears around her seeming to slow, their chaotic rhythm becoming almost melodic. The air grew lighter, the metallic tang replaced by the scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine. Rounding a bend in the labyrinth of wheels, she stopped short. Before her stood a small clearing, bathed in a soft, golden light that seemed to emanate from a single point. In the center of the clearing, resting on a pedestal of intricately carved stone, was a sphere. Not like the obsidian one, born of despair, but luminous and vibrant. Its surface shimmered with an inner light, swirling with colors Aisha couldn't quite name. Colors that felt both ancient and utterly new. An orb, Comet breathed, hopping onto the pedestal and tilting his head. The orb of the living creatures. As Aisha reached out to touch it, Ezekiel's voice strengthened, clearer than it had been since they entered the spinning wheels. Take it, Aisha. Embrace its essence. But be warned, understanding comes with responsibility. Hesitantly, she reached out and touched the orb. A jolt, not painful, but intensely powerful, coursed through her. Images flooded her mind. A lion roaring with righteous fury, an ox patiently tilling the earth, an eagle soaring effortlessly through the heavens, and a man, head bowed in contemplation. They swirled around her, each image pulsing with life, with purpose, with divine energy. Then, as quickly as it began, it stopped. The images faded, leaving her breathless and slightly disoriented. The orb pulsed gently in her hand, its light now a steady, comforting glow. What was that?" she stammered, clutching the orb tightly. "The 4 living creatures," Ezekiel replied, his voice now carrying a resonance it had lacked before. "The foundations of my throne, the guardians of my presence. They represent the 4 aspects of my divine nature: strength, service, vision, and wisdom." Aisha looked at the orb in her hand, trying to process what she had just experienced. But a lion, an ox, an eagle, and a man? What do they have to do with everything? Each embodies a crucial element of my plan, Ezekiel explained. The lion, with its fierce courage, represents righteous justice and the power to overcome evil. The ox, with its tireless dedication, represents selfless service and the willingness to bear burdens for others. The eagle, with its soaring vision, represents divine foresight and the ability to see beyond the limitations of the earthly realm. And the man, with his thoughtful contemplation, represents wisdom, understanding, and the capacity for empathy. Comet hopped back onto Aisha's shoulder, his eyes bright. "So like the ultimate team?" Ezekiel chuckled, a sound Aisha hadn't heard in what felt like forever. "In a way, yes. They are interconnected, each relying on the others to maintain balance and harmony. Without strength, service becomes servitude. Without vision, strength becomes brutality. Without wisdom, vision becomes delusion. And without the other 3, wisdom remains stagnant, unable to manifest in the world." Aisha gazed at the orb, a newfound understanding dawning within her. "So, gloom, he's trying to steal these qualities? To unbalance everything?" "Precisely," Ezekiel confirmed. "By stealing their essence, he weakens the foundation of reality itself, twisting hope into despair, love into hatred, and faith into doubt. He seeks to unravel the very fabric of creation." Aisha closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the orb in her hand. It wasn't just a pretty object. It was a symbol of hope, a beacon of light in the encroaching darkness. She opened her eyes, her gaze hardening with determination. "Then we have to stop him. We have to recover the other orbs and restore balance to the world." Comet chirped in agreement, puffing out his chest. "Indeed, and I, for one, am ready for the next challenge. Although perhaps a small break first? All that spinning has made me peckish." Aisha smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "We'll rest for a bit, Comet. But then we move on. There are 3 more orbs to find and a world to save." She clutched the orb of the living creatures tightly, feeling its warmth spread through her, bolstering her resolve. The path ahead was still shrouded in uncertainty, but she knew one thing for sure: she wouldn't back down. Not while there was still hope. Illusions and faith. The air shimmered. One moment, Aisha and Comet stood on a path paved with luminous moss. The next, the path dissolved into a swirling vortex of gray mist. Aisha gasped, grabbing for Comet, who chirped in alarm, feathers ruffled by the sudden change. "Welcome, little prophet," a voice echoed, laced with amusement. It was gloom, though Aisha couldn't pinpoint its source. Lost are we? Before her, the mist coalesced into a scene. Her childhood bedroom, meticulously recreated down to the chipped paint on the window frame and the faded posters of her favorite pop stars. A younger version of Aisha sat at her desk, hunched over a textbook, a frustrated frown etched on her face. "See, Aisha?" Gloom's voice dripped with false sympathy. "This is who you truly are. A dreamer, lost in fantasies, while the real world crumbles around you. You're nothing special." Aisha felt a pang of doubt, a cold knot forming in her stomach. Was Gloom right? Was she just a regular girl, out of her depth, playing a role she wasn't meant for? The illusion deepened. Her mother appeared in the doorway of the illusory bedroom, her face etched with worry. "Aisha, darling, why are you wasting your time with these silly books? You need to focus on your studies, on your future. This is just a distraction." Comet, perched on Aisha's shoulder, tilted his head, his bright eyes fixed on the scene. He shuffled his feet, uncomfortable at the shift in Aisha's disposition. He gave a loud bark. Aisha flinched. "Comet, be quiet," she whispered, her gaze still fixed on the illusory scene. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, amplifying her insecurities. Gloom chuckled. "Even your little pet knows you're deluding yourself. He wants you to come back to reality." The illusory Aisha at the desk began to cry. "I can't do it," she sobbed. "It's too hard. I'm not strong enough." Aisha's hand trembled. The orb of the living creatures pulsed faintly against her chest, its warmth a small comfort against the encroaching despair. But Gloom's illusions were powerful, preying on her deepest fears. Comet barked again, louder this time, nipping playfully at Aisha's ear. He then hopped down and began circling her feet, his tail wagging furiously. He was trying to get her attention. "Comet, stop it!" Aisha snapped, her voice sharper than she intended. She immediately regretted it, but the doubt already had taken root. She knelt to pet Comet, but the image of her mother's disappointed face flickered in her mind. The illusion shifted again. Now, she stood before her apartment building in the Bronx, the familiar brick facade looming above her. But something was wrong. The building was crumbling, the windows were dark and empty, and a chilling wind howled through the deserted streets. "Look around you, Aisha," Gloom hissed. "This is what happens when you chase after fantasies. You neglect what truly matters. Your family, your friends, your home. All will be lost because of your foolish quest." This was too much. Aisha squeezed her eyes shut, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to believe in the visions, in the power of the orbs, in her ability to make a difference. But Gloom's illusions were relentless, chipping away at her resolve. Then, Comet barked again, a sharp, insistent sound that cut through the despair. He wasn't just barking, he was singing, a joyful melody, filled with unwavering faith, spilled from his beak, each note a tiny beacon of light in the suffocating darkness. It was a song she had never heard before. Aisha opened her eyes. The crumbling building still stood before her, but something had changed. The air no longer felt heavy with despair. Comet's song was a lifeline, a reminder of the trust she had placed in something greater than herself, in the divine guidance that had led her this far. She looked at Comet, his small body vibrating with the force of his song. His eyes, usually filled with playful mischief, now shone with unwavering belief. He believed in her, even when she doubted herself. Aisha took a deep breath, the air filling her lungs with newfound strength. She focused on the orb of the living creatures, drawing on its power, on the qualities of strength, service, vision, and wisdom. She closed her eyes, and she thought of all that she was fighting for. Not just some abstract notion of hope, but for the people she loved, for the world she wanted to see. The crumbling building flickered, then dissolved, revealing the swirling gray mist once more. But this time, the mist felt less menacing, less absolute. It was just an illusion, a trick of the light. Impressive, Gloom's voice echoed, a hint of frustration in its tone. But your faith won't save you forever, Aisha. Doubt is a powerful weapon, and I have many more illusions to weave. Aisha opened her eyes, her gaze steady. "Faith isn't about seeing the whole path," she said, her voice clear and strong. "It's about taking the next step, even when you can't see where it leads." She looked at Comet, who chirped in agreement. "And I have a feeling, my friend, that our next step is right through you." The Valley of Dry Bones. The very atmosphere had curdled, heavy with a despair that settled like a shroud. Aisha stared at the chasm before her and Comet, but instead of the vibrant haven she'd envisioned, a blighted scar stretched across the land. Hues of ash and bleached bone dominated the vista. What should have been verdant slopes were now skeletal ridges, etched with fissures and barren of life. The river, meant to nurture, was a listless trickle, choked by dust devils. "The Valley of Dry Bones," she breathed, the name a brittle shard in her throat, less a description and more a dire pronouncement. Comet, sensing her unease, gave a soft, reassuring peep, his feathers ruffling. Alighting on her shoulder, he nudged her cheek, a silent offering of comfort. Their descent began, the crunch of their boots on the arid ground the sole counterpoint to the suffocating silence. Twisted formations resembling fossilized trees clawed at the sky. No birds called, no insects hummed. The very essence of life seemed to have been leached away. With trembling fingers, Aisha retrieved the book of Ezekiel, its leather a stark coolness against her skin. The life-giving passage felt heavier than lead, the weight of expectation almost unbearable. "It's gone," she whispered, her voice thin. "The vision, the feeling, it's utterly extinguished." She swept a hand across the desolate landscape. "It's beyond barren. It's extinguished." Comet hopped onto the open book, his tiny talons tracing the arcane script. He cocked his head, those bright eyes seeming to delve into secrets older than time. Aisha inhaled sharply, forcing focus. Gloom's influence was insidious, tendrils of darkness seeking to smother any flicker of hope. She mustn't yield. She needed to trust in Ezekiel, in the resilience of hope. Closing her eyes, she conjured the valley reborn, a riot of greens, a symphony of life. She pictured the river surging, nourishing the land, the slopes cloaked in vibrant foliage, the air electric with birdsong. Opening her eyes revealed the same desolate tableau, a brutal reminder of the magnitude of her task. Despondency reared its head, but she banished it, remembering Comet's unshakable faith. Drawing a deep breath, Aisha began to read. Initially hesitant, her voice strengthened, the ancient words cutting through the stillness. "The hand of the Lord was upon me, and carried me out in the spirit of the Lord, and set me down in the midst of the valley, which was full of bones." A subtle tremor passed through the earth as she spoke. The petrified wood began to splinter, dust motes dancing and spiraling around them, and caused me to pass by them roundabout. And behold, there were very many in the open valley, and lo, they were very dry. The air warmed, the oppressive silence giving way to a low, resonant growl. Aisha pressed on, her voice imbued with conviction. "Again he said unto me, Prophesy upon these bones, and say unto them, O ye dry bones, hear the word of the Lord." With each syllable, the tremors intensified. Fissures spiderwebbed across the skeletal hills, and a faint emerald blush tinted the parched soil. "Thus saith the Lord God unto these bones, Behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and ye shall live." A surge of power coursed through Aisha, a tangible force emanating from a book. The growl escalated into a grating cacophony, ancient wood groaning and shifting. "And I will lay sinews upon you, and will bring up flesh upon you, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and ye shall live, and ye shall know that I am the Lord." The transformation accelerated. The fossilized trees burst forth with verdant shoots, the barren slopes donned cloaks of emerald, and the trickle of muddy water became a raging torrent, its waters crystalline. A chorus of insect chirps and birdsong filled the air, a symphony of resurgence. Aisha completed the passage, her voice resounding with triumph. The valley was no longer a wasteland, but a paradise sculpted by faith and hope. And there, bathed in the newly born sunlight, pulsed the second sphere of hope, radiating a warm, golden light, resting on a pedestal of shimmering quartz, waiting to be claimed. The fiery temple. The valley of dry bones bloomed behind them, a vibrant testament to hope reborn. Aisha shielded her eyes, the stark contrast almost blinding after the desolate gray. "Where to now, Comet?" she asked, feeling a surge of energy coursing through her. Comet chirped, then dipped his head towards the horizon, where a plume of smoke billowed against the azure sky. "That way," he trilled, his voice carrying a new confidence. As they approached, the source of the smoke became horrifyingly clear. A temple, seemingly carved from obsidian, stood wreathed in flames. Lava rivers snaked around its base, hissing and spitting like enraged serpents. The air crackled with heat, and the stench of sulfur stung Aisha's nostrils. Gloom materialized beside them, his form flickering in the intense heat. A cruel smile twisted his lips. "Welcome, Aisha, to the Temple of Purification. Only the worthy may pass." He gestured theatrically at the inferno. "I doubt you'll make it." Aisha swallowed, the oppressive heat already making her lightheaded. "What is this place?" "A test," Gloom purred. "A test of your faith, though I suspect your little spark is already extinguished." He laughed, a dry, rasping sound that was almost lost in the roar of the flames. Doubt gnawed at Aisha. The flames looked impossibly high, impossibly hot. She could feel their searing kiss even from this distance. Could she really walk through that? But then she remembered the valley, the bones coming together, life springing forth from barrenness. She remembered Ezekiel's words, etched in her mind. "I will put my spirit in you, and you shall live." She closed her eyes, picturing the valley, the vibrant colors, the feeling of life. She whispered the words again, a silent prayer against the rising fear. When she opened her eyes, she saw not an insurmountable wall of fire, but a path. A dangerous path, certainly, but a path nonetheless. "I will pass," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. Gloom's smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of annoyance. "Foolish girl, you overestimate yourself." He vanished, his laughter echoing mockingly in the fiery air. Comet landed on Aisha's shoulder, his feathers warm against her cheek. He chirped encouragingly, nuzzling her ear. She reached up and stroked his head, drawing strength from his unwavering faith. Taking a deep breath, Aisha stepped forward. The heat intensified, licking at her skin, making her clothes feel like a second skin. Sweat beaded on her forehead, blurring her vision. The roar of the flames was deafening, a constant assault on her senses. She focused on the image in her mind, the path she had seen. One step, then another. The flames danced around her, but did not burn. The heat remained intense, but bearable. It was as if an invisible shield surrounded her, deflecting the worst of the inferno. She continued, her pace slow but steady. Each step was an act of defiance, a declaration of faith in the face of overwhelming odds. The air shimmered with heat, distorting the temple ahead. She could make out figures moving within the flames, grotesque shapes that seemed to writhe and mock her. Illusions, she knew, Gloom's tricks. She ignored them, focusing on the path, on the burning temple, on the single, unwavering belief that she would make it through. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, she reached the entrance. The flames parted before her, revealing a chamber bathed in an eerie orange glow. In the center of the chamber, resting on a pedestal of obsidian, was the third sphere of hope. It pulsed with a warm, golden light, a beacon in the heart of the fiery temple. As Aisha reached for the sphere, a wave of heat washed over her, stronger than anything she had felt outside. The illusions intensified, swirling around her, whispering doubts and fears. But she held firm, her hand outstretched. Her fingers brushed against the smooth surface of the sphere, and a jolt of energy surged through her body. The illusions vanished, the heat receded, and a sense of peace settled over her. She grasped the sphere, its warmth spreading through her, filling her with renewed hope and strength. Outside, the flames began to die down, their roar fading into a soft whisper. The temple of purification, its purpose fulfilled, stood silent and still, a monument to the power of unwavering faith. Aisha stepped out of the temple, comet swooping down to greet her, the third sphere of hope glowing brightly in her hand. A change of heart. The temple's embers faded behind, leaving Aisha and Comet at the brink of oblivion. A gray maelstrom churned below, an endless vista of desolation mirroring the ashen sky above. "Where are we?" Aisha murmured, her fingers tightening around the sphere of hope's warmth. Comet, visibly unsettled, shuffled on her shoulder. "Something's deeply amiss. This place, it's a void, an unpainted canvas." A voice, like fractured ice, resonated from the desolate expanse. "You have persisted, little seer. Against all designs, you defied me." Gloom coalesced before them, his form a restless eddy of shadow. Yet he appeared diminished, his presence less imposing than before. The malevolent fire in his eyes flickered with something akin to apprehension. "Gloom," Aisha stated, her voice resolute despite a tremor in her grasp. "Why are you inflicting this? Why are you taking the visions?" He responded with a desolate, mirthless sound that resembled a laugh. "Taking? No, I am safeguarding, defending. Visions, they breed entropy, perpetual transience. A ceaseless avalanche of possibilities, each more harrowing than the last." "Harrowing?" Aisha queried, furrowing her brow. "But visions are resplendent. They pulse with anticipation, dreams, and vitality." "Vitality is anguish," Gloom spat. "Mutability is anguish. Stillness breeds tranquility. The absence of sight is the absence of disappointment, heartbreak, bereavement." Aisha drew nearer, ignoring Comet's anxious cheeks. "But it also obliterates exhilaration, affection, evolution. Imagine a world devoid of aspirations, stripped of any yearning for betterment. That's the bleak existence you're forging, Gloom. A world of monochrome stagnation." "I offer equilibrium," Gloom retorted, a waver creeping into his tone. "Assurance. Within my sphere, there are no terrors that spring from the unknown. But isn't the unknown the very spice of existence?" Aisha countered softly. "Isn't it the anticipation of marvel that sustains us, even amidst hardship?" She extended her hand, the sphere of hope casting a gentle radiance across her palm. "Behold." Hesitantly, Gloom's gaze drifted toward the orb. Aisha concentrated, drawing upon the memories it contained. The unbridled delight of children, the tender warmth of an embrace, the awe-inspiring artistry of a sunrise. She presented the visions without coercion, simply extending an offering. Tentatively, a shadowy tendril unfurled from Gloom, reaching towards the sphere. As it made contact, chromatic waves washed over his form. He recoiled, flinching as though singed. What is this?" he stammered, his voice laced with a blend of trepidation and wonder. "These are the visions you sequestered," Aisha explained. "The memories, the aspirations, the yearnings of the world. Can't you recognize the grace within them?" She projected a mental image of the valley of dry bones, now burgeoning with vibrant life. She revealed the unwavering resolve in the people's eyes, the resilience of the revitalized land. Gloom remained fixed on the visions, utterly spellbound. For the first time, Aisha perceived true emotion in his gaze. Not animosity, not alarm, but something akin to remorse. I did not grasp it," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "I perceived only the looming threat of pain. I never discerned." His voice trailed off, unable to express the tempest of sensations surging within him. "It's not too late to alter course," Aisha encouraged gently. "You can relinquish the visions. You can rekindle the light." Gloom turned his gaze upon Aisha, truly saw her, perhaps for the first time. He perceived not an adversary, but someone who understood his fear, someone presenting a pathway to betterment. With a sigh that seemed to vibrate through the very foundation of the gray domain, Gloom closed his eyes. He raised his hands, and a supernova of illumination erupted from his being, suffusing the abyss with color. Visions cascaded forth, intertwining and merging, painting the pallid expanse with riotous hues. The sky above shimmered as clouds billowed into existence, sculpted into fantastical shapes. The stark desolation below began to transform into emerald landscapes, crystalline rivers, and majestic peaks. The reality that Gloom had sought to obliterate was being reborn, more vivid and breathtaking than before. As the light crested, Gloom's form began to unravel, dissipating like smoke carried on the breeze. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice fading to a mere breath, "for revealing the beauty." Then he was no more. The newly resurrected domain shimmered around them, a living testament to the might of hope and the potential for transformation. The third sphere of hope pulsed warmly in Aisha's hand, bathing her in a consoling radiance. Ezekiel's voice, stronger and clearer than ever, echoed in her mind. "The equilibrium is shifting, Aisha. You illuminated Gloom's error. The light will persist in its advance against the encroaching shadows. But your odyssey remains unfinished. There remains much to accomplish." Abruptly, a spiraling vortex of light materialized before them, glimmering like a portal to their homeworld. Comet trilled exuberantly, flapping his wings in anticipation. "Time to return, Aisha. We triumphed." Aisha smiled, her spirit soaring with both accomplishment and renewed determination. She advanced towards the vortex, Comet perched securely on her shoulder. "We triumphed," she echoed. "But this is merely the commencement." With a final glimpse at the vibrant realm they had helped restore, Aisha and Comet stepped into the luminous gateway and dissolved from view.